Thank you for joining us. I'm Katie Kremitis, an engagement manager at Blue Wolf, and I'm here with Satha Pillay, the Chief Information Officer from Veolia Waste Management here in Australia and New Zealand. Thank you for joining me, Satha.
You're welcome.
So we're here today, and I've got slides, to talk about how Veolia renewed its confidence in Salesforce. So they've been using Salesforce for a long time, and we are going to talk about some of the challenges and how Veolia went about resolving them. So Satha, can we start with talking a little bit about Veolia as a company?
Yeah, thanks. I think for a lot of people, they probably know Veolia mostly from the garbage trucks that they see running around the cities in Australia. But Veolia is much larger than that. Veolia is a global environmental management company focusing on waste, water, and the energy sectors. And one of the key things we did in 2014 was bring these three lines of business together. And as a result, that would lead into why we went onto this journey with Salesforce. But as a company, we are a global company. We're headquartered in Paris, and we operate in about 40 plus countries around the world, focusing in Australia predominantly in the waste management environment, but also largely doing water and energy. On the energy side, we do smart energy management, and we manage about 2,800 customers in that segment, while in the water, we do both drinking water as well as wastewater management.
Great, thank you. So you've used Salesforce for a while now within your organization, and focusing on the instance that we have in region. What were some of the challenges that you were facing, and why that confidence may have been a bit low?
Well, originally when we implemented Salesforce back in 2014, we focused predominantly on our waste management business. And there we had a combination of both national and state-based customers. The implementation was actually quite well run, and also the way we managed it was quite well, but on a state-by-state basis. So what happened was, as the business got more mature in their understanding and usage of Salesforce, the business started to ask for changes to be made, and largely these changes were made at a state level, and they followed what we would call best practice in managing changes at a state level. But when you take a step back, what you would notice is that we had disparate processes starting to emerge within the business as each different state started to want specific processes defined in the way they manage their customers and their business. As a result, we had disparate processes, and this led to gaps in the way we captured customer information. Our customer information was in large parts duplicated in some cases, incomplete in other cases, and as a result, it meant that we couldn't really rely on data-driven decision-making, which started to become a major challenge for us as Veolia started to look at its entire global and regional digital transformation and digital roadmap. Some of these elements started to become challenges for us. We didn't have a single view of the customer as well. As I said earlier, the duplication of customers, both between the state levels as well as at a national level, did mean that there was inconsistencies there. But also with the different processes, there was inconsistencies in the way we used Salesforce, and we weren't really deriving the true value of the platform. And as a result, we decided that we needed to do something in order to remedy the situation. So in 2017, what we decided to do was embark on a program of works that allowed us to firstly evaluate what we were doing with Salesforce and how we were doing that. We went through a process of doing an as-is assessment of Salesforce, both at a national and at a state-based level. The findings were pretty interesting in that we largely knew some of the issues that we were facing, but it also surfaced other areas that we weren't quite aware of, and it then allowed us to identify some a roadmap and a plan of what we should be doing. We built this plan out towards the latter part of 2017, and with the engagement of the business, and I think this again was largely business driven. From an IT perspective, we supported the business and we ensured that the business stakeholders were fully committed to the roadmap and fully committed to the transformation in terms of the way they wanted to see Salesforce being used. And the value that had to be derived from it had to be of value to them in how they manage their businesses. So they were critical in us developing the roadmap. We had a crawl, walk, run approach to the roadmap. And initially we looked at the foundational levels, which was the crawl aspect. And there we looked at several aspects around quick wins, as well as the aspects around what can we do and how do we improve it. And I think one of the key aspects we looked at from our perspective was to align business processes. As it stood in the Salesforce world. We had disparate processes which led to inefficiencies, as I mentioned earlier, and the key output of this reimagining process was to align those business processes from the way users viewed Salesforce, the way users use Salesforce, but also one of the critical things we did also was to look at the data model. As I mentioned earlier, we weren't very confident with the data-driven decision-making based on the information that we held because of the inconsistent and incomplete data. When we re-looked at the data model, we clearly defined the mandatory versus the optional data fields that were required, but also we put in guidelines as to how those data fields should be used and what data should be captured. The fact that a data field had alphanumeric capabilities didn't mean you could put an A1 and leave it at that. But at the same token, we couldn't make it mandatory that it needed to have 6 or 8 characters as a minimum, because sometimes names are shorter than that. What that meant was that when we were training our users and getting them to understand what the new environment looked like, I think the key there was to ensure that they understood the value of the data and why it needed to be captured in a specific manner. The fact that this would drive the way we made decisions and the way we captured data down the track as well. And I think from that perspective, when we embarked on it, that was also a very, very critical aspect of educating users and training them in how we need to use that.
Great. So in resolving these challenges and going back to remediating the system, capturing universal data, or using the system in a universal way, or uniform way, I should say, and standard processes across the board, which really helped to train new users. What also has it done for the business, maybe from a reporting standpoint?
Certainly, I think in the reporting area is one of the environments we've seen probably the most benefit to date. We have been using the new platform or the remediated platform for approximately 5 months now, but the one area where we've derived the most amount of benefit is in the reporting environment. Prior to the exercise being completed, we had one reporting analyst that would spend a week, probably up to 10 days, stitching various pieces of information together, collecting the information, validating the information, and then packaging the information for management reporting, as well as reporting to our global offices in Paris. Since going live, one of the key things we did was to try and make this as seamless and as automated as possible. And that entire exercise now takes no more than a few hours to run all of the reports that are necessary to collate them, package them, and have them ready. So that has been a huge benefit from that perspective. Simply because I think that was one of the areas we focused on. It was a key pain point highlighted by the business stakeholders that reporting was problematic, and not just for management reporting, but in terms of understanding sales performance, sales metrics, how were the salespeople performing against targets, etc., what the pipeline looked like. All of those aspects of reporting were called out as being crucial to be remediated, and we focused on that aspect. So we certainly had a lot of benefit in that area.
That's great to hear. So we've been working on cleaning up the data, getting a standard process. So this is all towards the digital transformation or working in that direction. What comes next now that you have cleaner data to work with, and what you're trying to achieve, I guess, long term?
In terms of cleaner data, yes, but it's still a process. It certainly is a process, and I think the business is working through that. With every iteration, the data gets better, the quality gets better, but also the adoption of the standard processes and the manner in which the system is being used is starting to bed itself down, which is then going to add more value. As I said, in our roadmap, this was the foundational phase, and it's now building from there. In terms of the Veolia digital roadmap, some of the next phases, and I think one of the key things we're looking to is our customer portal. And in order to have a customer portal that customers can trust the information that's available there, we have to be displaying data that's accurate and reliable. And I think that there was one of the key aspects to say, before we take that next step into going down, launching a customer portal across our entire customer base, let's ensure that the data is reliable and accurate. So yes, as we've now improving the data, the next step forward for us is to build our capabilities out on the Salesforce platform. One of the things we are looking at is the customer portal on communities, and from there we'll start building further on. I think there are aspects around, and if you went to various talks today, what you would have heard probably in every single talk is Einstein. And of course, that is a major push around the AI capabilities that Salesforce has embedded within its platform. For us, that's as part of the roadmap, it's a little further down. I think from a maturity level point of view, we're still working our way towards that, but certainly that is on our roadmap. It's something that we aspire to, and we would like to fast track that process as best as we can, but it's a matter of making sure that we bring the business along with us. We have reasonably solid use cases and business case that stacks up, that the business starts to see value from the AI deployments that we make. It's great to have AI and say that we're doing this, but is it adding value to our business and our business users? Is it adding value to our customers? I think in the foundational layer, we're still at that descriptive phase where we're starting to think about moving towards the predictive and then, of course, ultimately towards the prescriptive phase. But we're still in those early stages of descriptive, moving towards the predictive environment.
Great. So are there any additional challenges challenges that have been resolved that will help set you in the right direction for the potential use cases in the future for AI?
I think one of the key learnings that we took away from the whole process is that when the business sat down as a collective and started to discuss how to standardize business processes across the environment, they understood that there was uniquenesses in the way they operated on a state-by-state basis, but there was largely a commonality in how we did things, how we approached it. The whole aspect of making sure that we improve the customer experience has to start at that basic business process level from an internal perspective looking out. We start with how do we want the customers to experience our services and the services we deliver. So the key learning was for us to come together as a group to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, and make sure that we build these processes that are as simple as possible to deliver the value to our customers and to ensure that that customer experience is optimal, and constantly work at improving it as best as we can. So yeah, that was probably a key learning for us.
Great. And I think my last question is probably around, with these standard processes across the board between your sales and service teams, are we seeing more collaboration within Veolia to use the system in that standard way?
Certainly, I think collaboration is something that's being driven from our CEO through the entire business. In fact, it's one of his main mantras is we need to improve collaboration within the organization. Certainly Salesforce and the remediation of the Salesforce platforms help drive that collaboration, but also in the way we've integrated the collaboration. We use Google and G Suite applications, so we've integrated our Gmail capability with Salesforce as part of the remediation process. So when we bring in contacts in our email, that pulls across into Salesforce, which one makes it more efficient, and two eliminates the possibility of errors creeping in when we start to duplicate information across systems. So it starts to improve that collaboration between different people within the organization, but also different systems within the organization. But certainly collaboration has improved across the environment.
That's great. I think we've only just got a couple minutes left, but I'd like to open it up to the audience. If there are any questions that we've got for Satha. There's a mic.
First off, sorry if this has already been answered. I came 12 minutes late. What did you do to get buy-in from the business to actually use Salesforce? Was there any resistance? How did you overcome it?
So we were already using Salesforce as far back as 2014. This program of works was really about improving and optimizing the use of Salesforce. So getting them to use it in the standard way, that was really the challenge as part of this program. And as I said, it was getting all of the key stakeholders around the table, getting them to discuss and understand how they used it, why they used it in a specific manner, but also agreeing on standard processes that would basically incorporate 80+% of how we use Salesforce.
Thanks for that.
About the standard processes, were they in a guidebook, or is this built around validation for those fields?
We basically we discussed them and we built them. So based on the business processes that we were running within the organization at that point in time, we looked at all of the as-is, and we agreed on what should be the optimal standard process that we then applied and configured in the system going forward for the entire national organization to use. So there wasn't a standard guidebook, we took it off. How do we communicate it to the business? So that was basically a process of engaging the business through change management, communication, and training. So the broader user group had to go through that process where we had a dedicated change and training capability that made sure that business users, or the broader business users that weren't part of the core group of users that were in the project team, were aware of what the standard processes were.
Okay.
There's a question at the back. Are we out of time?
All right. So we'll take your last question off stage. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you again, Satha.
You're welcome.